deficit substantially. In our first year, over $300 billion, and this year, it's estimated to be somewhere in excess of $1.5 trillion, maybe as much as $1.7 trillion. So, we're going to spend the money wisely to buy American. For example, we're going to lower the cost of prescription drugs by letting Medicare negotiate prices with the drug companies. We've been proposing that for a long time.
Creating an even landscape for U.S. drivers heading into the busy Labor Day weekend. Data from AAA showed a national average gas price sits at $3.81 a gallon. This compares with $4.20 1 month ago. That remains well above the year-ago price of $3.18. Prices across the West Coast sit substantially higher than the national average, with drivers in Los Angeles seeing the highest recorded Labor Day gas prices ever at $5.25 a gallon. Kentucky taxpayers could also receive a $500 rebate from the state under a new bill that cleared the legislative committee. Under Senate Bill 194, individual tax filers from 2020 will receive a $500 rebate, and joint filers will receive a $1,000 rebate unless those individuals paid less than that amount in state taxes. If filers paid less than $500 or $1,000, they would receive a rebate of that lower amount. If they paid no state taxes, they would receive no rebate. The Senate Republican, the chairman of the committee, said the intent of the legislation was to address the recent spike in crushing inflation. McDaniel said in an official statement, "As our nation is experiencing the highest inflation in 40 years, it's important that lawmakers respond in a way that helps ease the burden on tax-paying people in Kentucky." McDaniel added that he expected those rebate checks to go out by the end of the summer should the legislation pass into law, with rebates totaling about $1 billion. The measure passed the committee unanimously, with all Republican lawmakers voting for it. The two Democrats on the committee were not present for the vote, with nearly $2 billion in projected surplus in the current fiscal year. Leadership of the Republican supermajority had already signaled their intent to leave much of this unspent in their two-year budget proposal, instead directing this toward tax cuts or the relief. New checks will be arriving very soon in the mailboxes for millions of people. There is an update for a full list of cities and states who are sending out stimulus checks. There is no denying the impact of the expanded child tax credit payments that parents received during the second half of 2021, which parents received hundreds of dollars a month per child and a lump sum at tax time to the annual tune of $3,600 per kid total. The payments slashed child hunger, lifted more than 4 million children out of poverty, and improved the lives of countless of others, allowing families to purchase necessities, pay down debt, or start a savings account. But despite the wishes of the president and all but one Democratic senator, the payments continued for several more years. Any plans for an extension were opposed by Virginia Democrat Joe Manchin.
Long time, but Farm is a tough opponent on these issues, and we finally got that legislation through. We're going to reduce the cost of health insurance under the Affordable Care Act because of action we've taken in the past, about $800 a premium this year, or a person this year. And we're going to hire more teachers. We're going to create millions of good-paying jobs, union jobs in manufacturing. I know it's not always the case. Not everyone, even my own team, necessarily agrees with me, but I don't know where it's written that we can't be a manufacturing center for the world. We've created over 600,000 manufacturing jobs, and I think we're going to continue. Just last week, major companies announced billions in new investments to make new solar panels here in the United States, fiber optic cables in the United States, electric cars, computer chips. Here in the United States, we're going to be employing American workers and using American products. On Friday, I'm going to be going to the groundbreaking of a new state-of-the-art semiconductor facility in Ohio, the biggest investment of its kind ever in our nation. And we're finally bringing home jobs that have been overseas for a while. I noticed some of the CAB members are smiling, but we're doing it, right? And we're making things here in America. We're making our supply chains more secure, and I believe we're winning the race to the future. Details matter, though. Execution matters. And I look forward to everyone here today giving me an update on your departments. And I'm incredibly optimistic about the future that we're building here in this country. But it requires solid work making these laws work. The devil's in the details. Mitch Landrieu, who can't be here today because his dad, who I knew well, passed away. His dad was a hell of a guy. His dad, way back early in the 60s, was way ahead of everyone in terms of dealing with racial equity in the South, particularly in Louisiana and in New Orleans. But anyway, he passed away yesterday. Mitch is doing a great job leading our team in implementing the infrastructure law. And earlier today, Secretary Armando announced the plan we're putting in place to get the CHIPS Act off the ground, and it's just the beginning. And separately, we're also hearing, we're hearing the latest from the Vice President and the Attorney General.
That they continue to raise prices. It flies in the face of all clear is coming from the inflation front.
Well, everyone's going to go off of past, backwards-looking indicators, Scott. And so, and everyone has to say that. The Fed has to say that right now. But the market, it moves so quickly, and the market's not going to sniff out backwards-looking data. It's going to sniff out what's happening in the moment. So it sniffed something, over the summer in the big rally that we saw from mid-June into the beginnings of August. And we're going to see next week, whether we've got a start of a trend here in terms of a decel in inflation. And if that happens, these growth stocks, many of which have been in a bear market for over 18 months now, just are so cheap historically, from a multiple perspective, that you'll miss out, I think, if you don't have some exposure to them.
So the stocks you like, and the first one I want to talk about is one that has had really a renewed sense of optimism around it, and that's Uber. Right? I mean, it feels like that story has started to turn significantly, not only from a business standpoint, but from a stock performance standpoint.
Well, Dara at Uber was really rewarded over the last few years for showing growth. And now we're in this new regime where everyone wants to see profits, everyone wants to see cash flow. And fortunately, Uber was on the verge of being cash flow positive. And starting over the summer on their last earnings print, they showed a massive free cash flow beat. So they are now going to key in on that metric. And the recovery that's going to happen just sort of with people coming back to work is in their favor. They're the leader in North America by far. And so they've got a lot of tailwinds behind them. And if you just go back to pre-COVID kind of multiples and say, where might this thing, be at from a reasonable, revenue perspective a year from now, 2 years from now? To me, they still look severely undervalued, and they could continue to have a strong run over the next couple of years.
Now, the other one I'm looking at, I have a harder time figuring out, other than it was down a ton. But I need more than that from you, and that's Twilio, right? It's down 75% year to date. There has to be more to the story rather than just, well, it's down a lot. What is it?
Well, people have lost faith in the management, I think, and Jeff Lawson. They've kind of, this was a stock rewarded for growth, but it hasn't, unlike Uber, it hasn't shown strong gross margins, strong profitability.